The Warwick Musical Theatre, for those of different generations, may have not known the beginning. There were theater in the rounds that were built in New England. There was 8 of them, including the one in Warwick. They were all individually owned, and it was summer stock. But then my dad started bringing big stars from TV in Vegas because the summer months, the TV shows really didn't have a season. So you'd have William Bendix from Life of Riley would be in the Cane Mutiny Court Martial. Hugh O'Brien, which was Wyatt Earp, would be in Destry Rides Again. John Raitt, who was Bonnie's father, was a Broadway star, and he'd be in Oklahoma and Betsy Palmer in South Pacific. And we would do a bunch of musicals, and it would be in the 3 months during the summer. And basically they would tour for 8 weeks, including the entire New England. They would tour our theater 1 week and then go, let's say, to Cape Cod and to Boston, and they would do 8 weeks. And then once Vegas stopped being as big, because they Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe, they stopped producing great musicals. We ended up to one-man spectaculars. We'd have a week with Jack Benny, Danny Kaye, Sammy Davis, Tom Jones, Engelbert, and we would basically, what Dad said, he would bring Las Vegas to Rhode Island at Rhode Island prices. And I even have one to quote for you down the road when we talk about Tony. That's just amazing what the concert business became in the last half of the century and has become the first half of this one. It's almost out of reach of the general public, and they don't have the intimacy where they could stand backstage, buy the star trailer, meet the person when they came on, do autographs after. It was old-fashioned way, and when like Vince Gill played acoustically, he said he felt like he was doing it in your backyard, So it was an ambiance of Rhode Island type mentality, seeing great Vegas and New York shows at Rhode Island prices. I mean, when we first opened in 55, you could get a season ticket for $10.
Wow.
The top price seat was $3, so things have changed, and that's what we were. And I'm the 4th generation of the promoters of the Bonoffs, and as it moved, I moved progression into what was closer to today's. We did oldie shows, the Temps and the Tops, Frankie Valli, Everly Brothers, Righteous Brothers. They're the ones I grew up with, so I was able to bring them in. And I worked 20 years for the World Wrestling Federation, and so I brought in those shows. And I love late night comics. I mean, way back when, during the last depression/recession, comedy was a big hit. I mean, we had Billy Crystal as an opening act and things like that. So you'd get to know these people as their way up, and some of them stayed with you. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld played for us, and then he came back when he was a big star. Howie Mandel basically used to call me Uncle Larry. He'd come in and we'd visit and ride on the sailboat. So it was a summer vacation for them while working, making money, and really enjoying entertaining Southern New England.
Absolutely. And so walk me through when Tony Bennett first performed.
Tony started, I think, I think Tony is special in so many ways, because I got to, and I'll explain how I got there, and I got to play with people who I just listened to growing up, whether it be the Everly Brothers or the Righteous Brothers or Frankie Valli. Tony Bennett was one of the few Dad got to be. He was a real fan, and he became a real friend. And it was in the 60s, I think 66. I have one thing here. Tony played with the Count Basie Orchestra in 1993, and that was up to $27.50. But if you go back a little further, 1978, Tony played with Michel Legrand, and the ticket price was $9.50. So 78 isn't that long ago to see this sort of inflation. And that's what happened within the industry. I mean, it became a total money-making thing rather than sharing the arts and enjoying it. And my father and I both believed in exposing the arts to people through high school anyways.
Absolutely. And so, what were some of the, I guess if you can go more in depth into the memories that your father shared with Mr. Bennett?
You know what? I didn't know. I really don't know. Tony and Dad got to be good friends, and he would go in the trailer and spend time talking to him for an hour, like I would do with some of the artists, like a Howie Mandel or a Billy Ray Cyrus, or even an Andrew Dice Clay. He and I were good friends. So, I mean, we would sit in there and we would visit. I visited with Bob Newhart and was able to give him an idea. But Tony and Dad, I think, just talked about what was and how much fun it was and how classy everything had become, because our theater was classy. I mean, for its time, it was state of the art. And actors liked coming there and being treated like stars. I mean, where they were in LA or New York, they were stars, but when they came here, they were big stars. And we went out to dinner to what was the Golden Lantern and a bunch of the other fine places after. And it was as close as we could get to New York fine dining and just enjoy. And Dad played golf, and if somebody played golf, they'd play it with him. I had a sailboat and some motorcycles for my era people, and it was a fun week. It was a week of coming home, and we made it fun, and it was great. Again, Tony and Dad's stories were probably back, from World War II on, but they never really shared those with me.
Yeah. And what do you want people to know about Mr. Bennett, given the learning of his passing today?
Yeah, I was happy in some ways because of the life he led, and very sad personally because of the loss of a great man who was just able to go on. Tony was Tony from the time I first met him, from everything. He never changed. It was like Johnny Carson. They they weren't big stars when they dealt with you. They were just regular people. And Tony maintained that without any kind of bad publicity during his whole period, his whole year. Everybody was happy with his career when he kind of came back. Even with the Alzheimer's, he would still remember certain songs. And, I mean, a lot of them had to use teleprompters and different things as they got older, Perry Como and all those people, and Sinatra. But Bennett just never changed. He always had that same smile on his face. He was always happy to meet you. He was gracious just to be there. And he was a consummate professional. He was what I was raised as. This is your prototype that you want to achieve of stardom, because so many people were so different on the way up versus the way down. And he never changed. He just was a good human being. And, I considered him one of my dad's friends, so that was very special. I have only good things and great things to say about the way he acted on stage, off stage, and we would see in the press to other people. So he was super special. And those in Rhode Island, I mean, he played the last time, I think, in the middle 90s. And you can look at the old web, which is bonoff.net, and you want to go there and you can see our entire 45 years.
Yeah, I'll be sure to do that. And I know that in our morning discussion today, someone had mentioned that that he had hardships at one time, but that he had made an extraordinary comeback. Do you know anything about that?
We all do. It's on the way up, it's on the way down. My dear friend, and I'll just use it, Howie Mandel. Howie used to come to me and we'd play, and then his career went down a little. And he says, I don't know when I'll be back. And I said, I'll always pay you X amount of dollars because that's what I paid you. And he and I became friends because everybody has good and bad times in their career. Howie is an example of somebody who's just gone to superstardom through the TV game shows and things. And he is just such a wonderful human being. He laughs, he has fun. When you see him off stage, it's the same way as you would see him on stage. And Tony was the same thing. He would just come in and he would smile and he's happy. And his men set up the theater and they were never a problem. You do the catering. He'd go on and do a great show. And he'd be so appreciative of the audience after, he was almost humble by the accolades that the people, gave to him after the show.
Love that. I love that. And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want people to know about Mr. Bennett?
No, I would just say in the Warwick Musical Theatre and in our growth, Tony was one of the pillars. You could every time he came there, you could count on beginning of the career, middle of the career, height of the career, low of the career. It's just he was a pillar of strength and a great vision of what our industry was and hopefully will be again.